Yeah, this whole stuff with the Antifa and all this crap about, take down the monuments. These people were slave traders. Take down the monuments. They were for the slavery and yada yada. You ever heard of a guy named Paul Craig Roberts? I'm sure you have. And he lays it out. Was the Civil War really about slavery? Are we so sure that that's what it was just about? Or was it just a tiny bit about it? Or not really about it at all? Which one's it going to be? Which one's it going to be? How we know the so-called Civil War was not over slavery. Again, his site is paulcraigroberts.org. So how we know the so-called Civil War was not about slavery. Paul Craig Roberts. When I read Professor Thomas DiLorenzo's article, which he links, the question that leapt to mind was, how come the South is said to have fought for slavery when the North wasn't fighting against slavery? 2 days before Lincoln's inauguration as the 16th president, Congress, consisting only of northern states, passed overwhelmingly on March 2nd, 1861, the Corwin Amendment that gave constitutional protection to slavery. Did you catch what I just said? 2 days before Lincoln, President Abraham Lincoln, the North, right? His inauguration as the 16th president, Congress, consisting only of the northern states, not the South, North only, passed overwhelmingly, March 2nd, 1861, the Corwin Amendment that gave constitutional protection to slavery. Lincoln endorsed the amendment in his inaugural address, saying, quote, I have no objection to its being made express and irrevocable. Quite clearly, the North was not prepared to go to war in order to end slavery when on the very eve of war, the U.S. Congress and incoming president were in the process of making it unconstitutional to abolish slavery. Here we have absolute total proof that the North wanted the South kept in the Union far more than the North wanted to abolish slavery. If the South's real concern was maintaining slavery, the South would not have turned down the constitutional protection of slavery offered them on a silver platter by Congress and the President. Clearly, for the South also, the issue was not slavery. The real issue between North and South could not be reconciled on the basis of accommodating slavery. The real issue was economics, as DiLorenzo, Charles Beard, and other historians have documented. The North offered to preserve slavery irrevocably, but the North did not offer to give up the high tariffs in economic policies that the South was as inimical to its interest. Blaming the war on slavery was the way the Northern court historians used morality to cover up Lincoln's naked aggression and the war crimes of his generals. Demonizing the enemy with moral language works for the victor, and it is still ongoing, that is. We see in the destruction of statues the determination to shove remaining symbols of the Confederacy down the memory hole. Today, the ignorant morons, thoroughly brainwashed by identity politics, are demanding removal of memorials to Robert E. Lee, an alleged racist toward who they express violent hatred. This represents a massive paradox, or presents a massive paradox. Robert E. Lee was the first person offered command of the Union armies. How can it be that a Southern racist was offered command of the Union, again, the Union's the North, Army, if the Union was going to war to free black slaves? See, this is all very interesting, isn't it? And this goes to show you that these far leftists, these liberals, they don't know what they're doing, these snowflakes. They don't know what they're doing. What are you here protesting for? I don't know. Not really sure. Don't have a job. George Soros is paying me $25 to come here today, so I'm here. And they said to argue against this, so that's what I'm arguing against. But did you just know what I told you? No, I didn't. Do you ever recall reading that in a history book by chance in the public school system? Well, no, I don't. Exactly. That little piece of history has been wiped clean for some reason. Let's continue. Virginia did not secede until April 17, 1861, 2 days after Lincoln called up troops for the invasion of the South. Surely there must be some hook somewhere that the dishonest court historians can use on which to hang an explanation that the war was about slavery. It is not an easy task. Only a small minority of Southerners owned slaves. Slaves were brought to the New World by Europeans as a labor force long prior to the existence of the U.S. and the southern states, in order that the abundant land could be exploited. For the South, slavery was an inherited institution that predated the South. Diaries and letters of soldiers fighting for the Confederacy and those fighting for the Union provide no evidence that the soldiers were fighting for or against slavery. Isn't that amazing? Princeton historian, Pulitzer Prize winner, Lincoln Prize winner, president of the American Historical Association, and member of the editorial board of Encyclopedia Britannica, James M. McPherson, in his book, based on the correspondence of 1,000 soldiers from both sides. That's quite a bit. What They Fought For was the title, 1861 to 65, reports that they fought for two different understandings of the Constitution. Excuse me? Wasn't about blacks, whites, slavery, freeing. Nope. Two different understandings or interpretations of the Constitution. Kind of like the left, hate speech. You should be thrown in jail for hate speech. No. I think you should be able to say words as the Constitution lays plain, whatever the hell you want to say. Say it. Say it. It's just words. It's just words. And now that Trump's in office, all of a sudden they've changed their tone. I talked to you about this the other day. We're now declaring that hate speech never really existed. Was that the Supreme Court that said that? Or the Department of Homeland Security memo? Something, somewhere. I thought it was a court. There's no such thing as hate speech, right? It's free speech. So there's a different interpretation from the left to what we think the Constitution clearly states. Because in the Constitution, it doesn't say hateful words, mean words. It says the right to free speech shall not be infringed, pretty much, right? So, two different understandings. This is from 1,000 soldiers' correspondence, 1,000 from both sides. Two different understandings of the Constitution. As for the Emancipation Proclamation on the Union side, military officers were concerned that the Union troops would desert if the Emancipation Proclamation gave them the impression that they were being killed and maimed for the sake of blacks. That is why Lincoln stressed that the proclamation was a war measure to provoke an internal slave rebellion that would draw Southern troops off the front lines. If we look carefully, we can find a phony hook in the South Carolina Declaration of Causes of Secession, December 20th, 1860, as long as we ignore the reasoning of the document. Lincoln's election caused South Carolina to secede. During his campaign for president, Lincoln used rhetoric aimed at the abolitionist vote. Abolitionists did want slavery abolished for moral reasons, though it sometimes is hard to see their morality through their hate, but they never controlled the government. South Carolina saw in Lincoln's election rhetoric intent to violate the U.S. Constitution, which was a voluntary agreement and which recognized each state as a free and independent state. After providing a history that supported South Carolina's position, the document says that to remove all doubt about the sovereignty of states, an amendment was added, which declared that the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states, respectively, or to the people. South Carolina saw slavery as the issue being used by the North to violate the sovereignty of states and further centralize power in Washington. The secession document makes the case that the North, which controlled the U.S. government, had broken the compact on which the Union rested and therefore had made the Union null and void. For example, South Carolina pointed to Article 4 of the U.S. Constitution, which reads, "No person held to service or labor in one state under the laws thereof, escaping into another, shall in consequence of any law or regulation therein be discharged from such service or labor, but shall be delivered upon up on claim of the party to whom such service or labor may be due. Northern states had passed laws that nullified federal laws that upheld this article of the compact. Thus, the northern states had deliberately broken the compact on which the Union was formed. The obvious implication was that every aspect of states' rights protected by the 10th Amendment could now be violated. And as time passed, they were. So South Carolina's reading of the situation was correct. The secession document reads as a defense of the powers of states and not as a defense of slavery. Here is the document. He links right to it. Read it and see what you decide, he says. A court historian who is determined to focus attention away from the North's destruction of the U.S. Constitution and the war crimes that accompanied the Constitution's destruction will seize on South Carolina's use of slavery as the example of the issue the North used to subvert the Constitution. The court historian's reasoning is that as South Carolina makes a to-do about slavery, slavery must have been the cause of the war. As South Carolina was the first to secede, its secession document probably was the model for other states. If so, this is the avenue by which court historians, that is, people who replace real history with fake history, turn the war into a war over slavery. Can you see how bad we're lied to? Our history. Christopher Columbus, I'll give you the worst one of all. Christopher Columbus came and discovered America. Then how the hell did they, we have these pictures of Thanksgiving and the Indians. Wait a minute. Where do those Indians come from? Christopher Columbus discovered this place. Where the hell do those people come from? Right? We're lied to. It's that simple. Once people become brainwashed, especially if it's by propaganda that serves power, they are more or less lost forever. It is extremely difficult to bring them the truth. Just look at the pain and suffering inflicted on historian David Irving for documenting the truth about the war crimes committed by the Allies against the Germans. There is no doubt that he is correct, but the truth is unacceptable. You want to know why? I'll give you a reason. I haven't talked about this in a long time, but I'll never forget it. And it's not that the truth goes through three phases. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it's violently opposed. And third, it becomes common knowledge. Not that. The first time somebody experiences something or learns about something, again, for the very first time, that becomes their truth. That becomes their foundation. That becomes their matrix, if you will. And throughout their life, as they grow up as a kid, toddler to a kid to a young adult, etc., nothing's really questioned. Everyone else seems to accept the same stuff. We don't really question it. It's not a big deal, whatever. And then one day, someone comes to you and basically tells you that little thing we were all taught is complete nonsense, it's a lie. The instant reaction is that, oh, here we go, conspiracy theories, or oh, here we go, you're such an idiot, you're so stupid, You're not even going to question your foundation, your matrix. But if you can set your ego aside and just say, let me hear what this person has to say, and then they present you with overwhelming evidence, like what I'm doing here right now, you can do one of two things. Say, man, that's interesting. I'm going to have to look into that. And then go look into it. Don't just say it. And then realize, oh my gosh, I believe that my whole life. So does most other people. Wow. And then you're going to get upset. Well, why has that lie been told to us? And if that's a lie, then what else is a lie, right? And then you start going down that rabbit hole. But the default reaction to most human beings is that you can't question the matrix, my truth, my foundation. I believe in it. Same with religion. Oh, I'm a Christian, or I'm a Catholic, or a Muslim, whatever you are. Doesn't matter. Did you pick that? Did you decide one day, I'm going to research all religions, and I'm going to pick one. I'm going to pick the best one that I could come up with, right? When I research something that I want to buy, and I'm sure you do it too, don't you research all the options, all the choices? I need a new laptop. Whoa, boy, which one should I get? Windows, Mac, i7 processor, i5, bang for my buck, right? You're going to go through the whole thing. and you're going to make the best decision you can make. But in this example, religion, you never made that decision. You grew up into it, and your mom and dad grew up into it, and their mom and dad grew up into it, and you never questioned it. Why? Because it became your truth since you were a little baby. You never questioned any of it. So once you finally do question some of that stuff, and religion is a really good example, by the way, you start to ask yourself, what the hell makes mine the right one? Who in the house really says mine's the right one? How is it even possible? Because the other person can argue that theirs is the right one, and you can both take a lie detector test, and you'll both pass with flying colors. The bottom line is, that's why people get so defensive when you talk about religion, or this, there's one's wrong. Oh, they're not even willing to look at it. They don't want to see the evidence. They don't want to see nothing. La 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 la, no, no. And that's just religion. We can go into all kinds of topics. It could be political, left versus right, Democrat versus Republican, and the same thing. Nobody wants to take the time to really look into history, look into all the facts. I just want to turn on the TV and let them tell me what to think, and I'll repeat every word of it, because these people are way higher. They're way above me. They're way above me. So I value their opinion, and I'll run with it. Only to find out that they're a bunch of liars with an agenda. But then again, you wouldn't know that if you didn't take the leap to the other side to say, I want to research this stuff. And instead got defensive and said, no, you guys are all conspiracy theorists, and MSNBC and CNN are great news sources. Yeah, anyways, there's a little bit more to this, but the point is made, and I'm going to link this as I always do in case you want to go check it out and read it in full. There wasn't much left, just a little bit left. But isn't that amazing? History. With that old saying, those who win the wars write the history. There's a reason that that's a saying. Those who win the wars write the history. Unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Remember that one? Maybe not. Take care.